And the second reason for our celebration is because of our new building. So we're going to first start off with our 5-year anniversary. So in order to kind of actually tell you how we even got here to 5 years, I need to tell you about the story of the cross, okay? So a lot of people don't know our story. Even my right-hand man, Ed, even Ed doesn't know this entire story. So don't you guys think that you guys know it already, because even Ed, he doesn't know everything. And so today, well, you know what I mean by that, okay? All right? So this is, now we're all going to be on the same page as to how we got to our 5-year anniversary. So my story takes you back in time. So we're talking about during the 1960s. It takes you to a different place. So we're talking about Southeast Asia. And so during the 1960s, U.S. forces had gone into Southeast Asia. The U.S. was fighting against the communist aggression in Southeast Asia. What the United States soldiers needed was an indigenous population to be able to help the Americans to fight in the Vietnam War. The communist aggression was going into the country of Laos. And because of this, U.S. forces could not legally enter into the country of Laos. The Hmong people were living in the country of Laos. U.S. forces needed an indigenous population to help the Americans to fight in the Vietnam War. The Hmong people were already living there. And so the CIA went and recruited the Hmong people to help the Americans to fight in the Vietnam War. In 1973, the war went really bad, and so U.S. forces pulled out. And when the U.S. forces pulled out, the Hmong people were left behind. We were then at the hands of our enemy, which was the North Vietnamese communist regime. They started to kill hundreds of thousands of our people because of our alliance with the Americans during the Vietnam War. So my parents knew that they could no longer safely live in the country of Laos. They knew that if they were going to stay, they were going to be killed. And so, along with my parents and thousands of other Hmong people, we needed to leave the country of Laos. We knew that the next safest place was in Thailand. And so my parents, along with hundreds and thousands of Hmong people, they left their villages with whatever they can carry on their back, running through the jungles of Laos. And as that's happening, the communist regime, fully equipped with all their weapons, we're going to hunt down every Hmong person that they can find. So before I was born, my parents had already buried my 3 older siblings. Between my parents leaving Laos to finally get into Thailand, before I was born, I already had 3 older siblings. These 3 older siblings, they got sick, disease, malnutrition, starvation, they all passed away. So before I was born, my parents already buried their 3 oldest children. So then my mom was actually pregnant with me as she was running through the jungles of Laos. My mom knew that if she died, not only would she die, but this child inside of her, which was me, was also going to be killed. Thankfully, my mother is not a statistic. It is estimated that over 100,000 Hmong people died during the Vietnam War and after the Vietnam War. If my mom would have been a statistic, I would not be here today. But by the grace of God, in 1980, I was born in the Ban Vinai refugee camp in Thailand. So that's a picture of me when I was born. The first 7 years of my life was growing up in complete poverty, having nothing in a third world refugee camp. You guys see those commercials where they're going to say, send money to these poor nations across the ocean. Well, some of those commercials included us, the Hmong people in those refugee camps. So for the first 7 years of my life, not enough food, shelter, clothing, medicine, you name it. That's how I grew up. During this time period, Western missionaries have finally penetrated Southeast Asia. So the gospel message started to be spread into these refugee camps. Sadly today, only about 10% of the Hmong community are Christians. Over 90% are still shaman. Shamanism is the worship of the ancestral spirits. When my parents heard the gospel message, they said, yes, we want to convert into Christianity. So by the grace of God, I was already born into a Christian family. My entire life, all I'd ever known was Jesus. And so that's something that I'm very thankful for, that my parents were that small minority that actually converted into Christianity. When I was 7 years old, in 1987, I left the refugee camps of Southeast Asia to come to the United States. This was the most scariest experience as a little boy you can go through. One day, I'm in the refugee camps with all these Hmong people, and the next day, all I see are blonde hair and blue eyes. That was really scary because I had never seen that before. You would talk to them, they wouldn't understand you. And they would talk to you, and you wouldn't understand them. That was really scary to transition here to the United States as a poor little refugee boy. So I consider myself a Central Wisconsin boy my entire life. I grew up in Wausau my entire life, and this is the duplex that we lived in. It was upstairs. So upstairs, there was 2 bedrooms. And by now, I'm the oldest of 9 kids. And this upstairs duplex had 2 bedrooms. My parents had 1 bedroom, and all 9 of us kids were jam-packed into 1 bedroom. And to make matters worse, it was also cockroach infested. So that's how I grew up. We lived in poverty. And yes, I was very thankful that we were no longer living in the refugee camps. But by American standards, we were still living in poverty here in the United States. My father worked at Kobe, and Kobe, he made $25,000 a year trying to support 11 moms. I have no idea how was he able to do that. We relied upon welfare. We got food stamps. All of our clothes came from Goodwill. When we were short on food, we would go to the Salvation Army. I learned that my Caucasian friends, they got to do all these really cool things for spring break and for summer break. But for me, growing up, there was no time for those fun things. My parents couldn't afford those things for me. So most of my summers were spent out on the farm fields picking rocks as a little kid, picking cucumbers, picking ginseng. This is how I grew up. So as I got to know my Caucasian friends, one winter, I heard my Caucasian friends, and they said this word that I had never heard before, and they said Christmas. You see, I was still trying to learn the English language, so I had never heard of that before. So I went to my friends and I asked, hey, I don't know Christmas. Can you explain Christmas to me? And the way that my little Hmong refugee boy, the way that my brain understood Christmas was that there's this fat, red guy, and he wants to come into your house, but he doesn't come through the front doors. This fat guy somehow squeezes through your chimney, and he comes down the chimney, and when he comes down the chimney, you Americans are weird, because there's a tree that's growing inside of your living room. Yeah, you all have a tree that's growing inside of your living room, and this fat guy, he takes all of these presents, and he leaves these presents underneath the Christmas tree. You see, I was really intrigued by this idea that Caucasian kids, they get Christmas presents. Because this Hmong kid at my house, I got none. So I went that day after school and I said, hey Mom, guess what I learned at school today? So like these Caucasian kids, they get Christmas presents. Mom, what about Hmong kids? Do we Hmong kids, do we get any Christmas presents? And my mom says, no, we can barely afford to put food on the table for you to eat. And you can only imagine how much that crushed the heart of this little Hmong boy, knowing that on Christmas morning, all of his Caucasian friends, they were going to wake up and they were going to open up all these ginormous Christmas presents. And yet at my house, because I'm this poor Hmong refugee, that there was going to be diddly squat for me to open up. That broke my heart. All of that finally changed when I had this wonderful teacher. Her name was Ann Merrifield. She knew that my family lived in poverty. She's the one that taught me how to speak English today. And so then one Christmas, Ann said to me, you know what, Yao? You and your families, you guys will never get Christmas. Why don't you come over to my house on Christmas morning and we can celebrate Christmas together? And so when she told me that, I was just so excited. I just thought, wow, maybe for the first time in my life, I can finally feel what it means to be American. Because I was living here in America, but because we lived in poverty, I never got to experience these American things. So on Christmas Day, we went over to her house, and I learned that Americans like to bake cookies. You guys take that for granted, but when you live in poverty and when you're a Hmong, you don't bake cookies. And so that was really cool. And then at the end of the day, she said, hey, Yao, you and your siblings come over here, look underneath the Christmas tree, and there are presents with your name on there. I want you to open up your very own Christmas presents. And that was the coolest experience ever as this refugee growing up in the United States. Here is this Caucasian woman, because for whatever reason, she just cared and loved my family. She was willing to go out of her way that on Christmas Day, I finally was able to open up my own Christmas present. That was the coolest experience as a Hmong kid growing up here in the United States. All because of a Caucasian woman saying, I don't care the color of your skin. I love you for who you are, and because I love you, here's what I'm going to do to show you that I love you. So then she continued to just give my family all of these American experiences. And so that's me, okay? And many of you guys have not seen my brother, okay? But that's my brother there when he was much younger. My brother's also in the back. And so then he's also Cheng, if you want to stand up. Okay? So as you can tell, those were the days that Cheng and I had much more here. Okay? Alright? Okay? So Ann never said this to me, but without her saying it, she taught me one of the most valuable life lessons that's forever changed my life. This is the reason why we're all gathered here today. That a black person can be here, a white person, a Korean person, a Hmong person, a Caucasian person. This is the reason why we can gather here today, because she taught me that loving others sees no skin color and social economics.
All right.
You see?
Yeah.
It never dawned on me growing up that like a person of a different skin color can love me even though I look totally different. And she was able to break those barriers for me. I just thought because I'm Hmong, the only friends that I can have are Hmong friends. And here she taught me, yeah, you don't have to look like me for me to show you love, for me to help you out. And so I was, at a very young age, I started to realize that here in America, when you Caucasians love, it doesn't matter the color of your skin. It doesn't matter the social economics of the other person. When you all love, you just genuinely love unconditionally. It doesn't matter what they look like on the outside. So then God started to slowly open up my eyes to see a love beyond just my Hmong ethnicity. Maybe I can be friends with a black person, a white person, that I could just love all people. I graduated from Wassa West in 2000, okay, so it's really awesome. I actually have some of my classmates that graduated with me, so if you're those folks, can you please stand up? Come on. Yeah, so it's really cool that we still hang out today, so you guys can grab a seat, okay? So I graduated from Wassa West and I went to UW-Stevens Point that year, and then a year later, September 11th happened. And so then I wanted to do my part to make America safer. You know, I thought about people like Ann that were so wonderful. And you know, how dare these Middle Eastern terrorists come to the United States to destroy bad Americans when I just know that they're good, kind Americans. So I wanted to do my part to make America safer. I talked to a lot of my Hmong friends, my Hmong family. They're like, "Yeah, don't do this. You are not an American citizen." Because I came over here as a refugee, I was termed a legal alien. I could legally live here, but I was not a full-fledged American citizen. I could not vote. They said, why would a Hmong person want to sign up to fight for their country, to possibly die for their country, and they're not even allowing you the right to vote? I thought about that, and I just said, you know what? I don't have that piece of paper that says I'm an American citizen, but in my heart, I feel like I'm an American, and the right patriotic American thing to do is to sign up for the military. So against the wishes of every Hmong person that I talked to, I signed up as a non-citizen in 2002 to become a combat infantry soldier with the Wisconsin Army National Guard. I went to boot camp down in Fort Benning, Georgia in 2003, and yes, I was the only crazy Hmong soldier there, okay? So out of thousands of recruits, they're like, what's a Hmong guy? What are you doing here, you know? And it's like, well, I just feel like I'm an American, and so this is the right American thing to do. So after I graduated from boot camp, I was deployed to Iraq in Operation Iraqi Freedom. From 2004 to 2005, I was stationed in Samarra, Iraq, which is about an hour and a half north of Baghdad. Saddam Hussein was captured 35 minutes away from where we lived. And so it was a very, very dangerous and a deadly place. Every day we would go out on the streets looking for the insurgents to make sure that they would not hurt American forces or the indigenous population living in Iraq. And it's just really horrific after you have gone through the tragedies of war to see how evil humanity can be. And so that was really sad to be able to see that. So we were in Iraq for about 2 weeks, and on December 26th of 2004, we were just on a routine foot patrol to enforce their curfew. Samarra, Iraq was so dangerous because at night the insurgents, they would keep planting bombs in roadsides. We would not know where they plant these bombs. We would walk by, they would detonate these bombs, killing lots of Americans. They would only plant these bombs during the nighttime, not during the daytime, because during the daytime we can see them. And so every night we would have to go and patrol the streets, making sure the insurgents were not going to be planting those. On that particular night, Staff Sergeant Todd Olson, he was the #1 man. We got to this particular spot. You have to imagine this being at night. It was completely pitch black, dark. Staff Sergeant Todd Olson was the #1 man in the formation. There was another sergeant that was #2, and then I was #3 from the front. We did not know it. When we got to that spot, there was already an ID in the middle of the road. When Staff Sergeant Todd Olson got close enough to that bomb, the insurgents, using a remote control from hundreds of yards away, they detonated that bomb. And when they detonated that bomb, Staff Sergeant Todd Olson became the second soldier from Wisconsin to die in Iraq, just a few yards away from where I was. So at this time, I'm 24. I did not want to die in Iraq. In desperation to stay alive, I made a deal with God. You see? Up to this entire point, I just did the motions of being a Christian. I went to church. But going to church, it doesn't mean you get to go to heaven, because then anybody can just go to church. We are saved because of our faith in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Because of what we believe, okay?
Yes.
I went to church. That's all I did. But I questioned my faith. It was only after that I realized that my faith needs to be real. I do need to believe in Jesus Christ. And so in desperation to stay alive, I made a deal with God, and I said, God, if you can get me out of Iraq alive when I come back to Wausau, I'll do anything you want me to do. You just got to get me out of Iraq alive. Okay? That was my desperate deal. So by the end of 2005, I came back home with 23 out of my 25 soldiers from Neilsville. We ended up losing 2 of our buddies overseas. And finally, in 2007, we had our first child, and so that was Kennedy. And then this is my family today. So we have 6 kids, 4 boys and 2 girls. Right. In 2008, I graduated from college. Mela makes fun of me. Mela says, hey, yeah, you know, people that go to college for 8 years, they're called doctors. I can't help it that I had to do a little vacation overseas in the big sandbox, okay? Alright, so then I became an educator in the DC Everett School District. And actually, Preston, why don't you stand up? So Preston is one of the students that I taught at the middle school. And how awesome is that? So my entire life up to this point, I was a Hmong guy going to the Hmong church. There's an all Hmong church here in Wausau. And so then in 2002, I got my master's degree in educational leadership from Marian University. And then in 2003, there was a new pastor that came to the Hmong church. His name was Pastor Jerry. And Pastor Jerry said, hey, Yao, you have your master's degree in educational leadership. So we also need somebody that's going to be in charge of the kind of the Christian curriculum in the entire church. So then he made me to become the head of all of the educational curriculum at the church as far as discipleship and Christian studies. There, the church was using me. I was, so different things I've done at the church, teaching young children, teaching the youth, teaching the adults, being an elder at the church. So I was doing all those things at the Hmong church. So then in 2015, because Pastor Jerry had done such a phenomenal job, and so I was pretty much his sidekick. So there was Pastor Jerry, and then there was Yao, and I did all of his work for him. That the program in discipleship and what we were doing at the church was working so well. And a lot of the other Hmong churches had heard about the great work that was being done in Wausau, that he actually got promoted to become the superintendent of the Hmong National Office of 125 churches in all of the United States. So then his office was now located in Colorado, okay? So then he said, hey, Yao, we made a really good team in Wausau. And now that I have become promoted to become the superintendent of over 125 churches here in the United States for all the Hmong churches, he was the big guy in top. He said, hey, Yao, I want you to really consider moving out to Colorado. And so then there's a position that's open, and I want you to apply for it. So then after he moved out to Colorado, he says, Yao, I want you to come and join me. So they actually flew me to Colorado. And during that time, there was actually a church opening to become a children's pastor at one of the Hmong churches in Colorado. So they flew me out there. And I went to the Hmong National District Office in Colorado. And it was just a really, really cool experience being in the Rocky Mountains. And I just thought, wow, here's this really prestigious opportunity for me to travel throughout the entire United States now. We did something really awesome at the Hmong church in Wausau. And he wants me to implement that nationally, over 125 Hmong churches. How cool would that be to do that? I thought about that. I prayed about that. But at the end of the day, my heart was not in the Rocky Mountains. My heart was for central Wisconsin. So I flew back here and I said, this is my home. This is my community. This is where I want God to use me, not in the Rocky Mountains. So I came back, and then we started to do small group Bible studies in different people's homes. And so I was working now with a lot of young couples that were Hmong, doing Bible studies in their houses. And so we were doing discipleship, following Jesus Christ. And it was really cool. As I was leading these young couples in their homes, I can see that their lives, their marriages, and their families are being transformed. And I just wow, that's so powerful. What God is doing through this little Bible study that we've got going on. And I thought, how cool would that be if we can make and if we can multiply disciples? Can you imagine how powerful this would be if we expanded this to a larger level? So then, my favorite Bible verse is Matthew chapter 28, verse 19. And it says, go therefore and make disciples of all the nations, as I was growing my walk with the Lord, I looked around me and I said, why does the color of my skin dictate who I hang out with on Sunday morning? Why does the color of my skin determine this Bible study that I hang out with? Because I'm Hmong with all these Hmong people. And yet Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., he says, it is appalling that the most segregated hour of Christian America is the 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. And I just thought, man, like, you know, Anne Merrifield, she taught me to love all people. And why is it that in the church, I can only love Hmong people? I should be able to love all people. And the Bible says, yeah, go out there and just share Jesus with all nations. And it was during that time that I had met a friend by the name of Pastor David Krieger. He was a church planter. He wanted to start churches. And I started to learn from him, and he gave me this idea that, hey, maybe what we need here in central Wisconsin is a multi-ethnic church, a church that's just open for all people. So he gave me that idea that, hey, maybe I can start up a church. So I thought, wow, it's never been thought of before, but I want to start up a church. But I needed to figure out my audience of the church. So I was like, okay, if I start this church, who do I reach out to? So I had two choices. Choice number one, Hmong next generation. You have a lot of young Hmong couples and Hmong families that are unchurched. Maybe this church that I want to start is going to reach out to young couples that are Hmong and bring them to the Lord. My other option was this, a multi-ethnic church. Why don't you just open up a church for people of all different skin color and backgrounds, okay? So then I kind of had to choose one or the other because I wouldn't be able to do both. So I prayed long and hard about that, and at the end of the day, I wanted to do a multi-ethnic church plant. I want you guys to know, sometimes in life, you come to a fork in the road, and you have to make two important decisions. Do you go with this one or this one? I want you to know that if I would have done the Hmong Next Generation Church, we would not be here today. That would have looked completely different. But God was working in my heart to say, yeah, we just need a multi-ethnic church. Just bring all people of all background, all skin color together. And so the cross would be completely different if I would have gone the other way. So then I just felt like, okay, this is what God is wanting me to do. It's to be fulfilling my promise to God that I made 10 years ago. So I wanted to become a pastor of a multi-ethnic church. I went back to the Hmong church. I gave that proposal. Things got really complicated. They're like, yeah, you've got no experience, no degrees, nothing. And so then I did not get the backing of the Hmong church. So then what did I do? I just said, well, got it. If I don't have a church, I guess I'm going to have to start off with my house. Because that's all that I have. And so we started my church in my house in Weston. And so it was in my living room. So we did Sunday church in the living room of my house. And I preached in the living room of my house. Can someone please tell me, what is something that all these people have in common? They're all Hmong. Okay?
Yes.
At this point, I didn't really know of a Caucasian Christian. Because remember, my entire life, the only Christians that I hung out with were who?
Hmong.
The Hmong people. So here was the challenge. Yeah, you want to do a multi-ethnic church, but the only Christians that I knew that were Hmong. And so that was really challenging. So this was the crew that I started back with, January of 2016. And then, a few months later in the summertime, I was at my mother-in-law's house. And you guys might not know this, but Joan, she used to live next to my mother-in-law, and Laura and Luke. And so every day I would go to my mother-in-law's house, and I would see Luke, Laura, and Joan, and I started to just kind of chat with them a little bit. I introduced myself to them and what I was doing. And they're like, that's a really cool idea. And so then they started to come to my church in the living room of my house. And so here's the sad story though. The more Caucasians that came, the less Hmong that I started with. So as more Caucasians started to come into the church, those original Hmong people that I started with, they started to leave the church. It was so bad to the point that for a while there in 2016, as more Caucasians started to come, all of my original Hmong people started to leave. It got so bad to the point that year that there was only a few of us left. That was it. That was the first year. 2016 was the most difficult year of my entire life. It was really painful to see the people that I started off with leave me. And when people leave you, you feel like you've done something wrong. You have failed. I knew that I couldn't go back to the Hmong church. So I'm looking behind me, and there's not a lot of people at my church anymore. I wanted to stand strong to my convictions to say, I believe that a church should be welcome for all people. And the Hmong started to leave me. And that was really, really painful for me to go through that experience. There were many sleepless nights. Mela and I, we would argue back and forth. We would cry together. God, is this what you want us to do? God, why is this so difficult? If this is what you want us to do, why are people leaving us? Am I failing you, Lord? So by 2017, so a year later, all the Hmong that I originally started with in 2016, all of them were gone. No one left. Not a single one of them. In 2017, I graduated with my second master's in Christian studies to become a pastor. There was only a handful of individuals left by the end of 2017. But we knew that we needed to grow. We needed to move somewhere else. So in 2017, we moved to a public building on the north side of Wausau. It was during that time period that I met my good friend, Pastor Kim Swenson, and other church planting pastors, also my good friend, Pastor Chris Cooper. And so it was during this time where they're like, hey, Pastor Yao, if you want to start up a church, we can come alongside to help you. And so Pastor Kim Swenson, also with Pastor Chris Cooper, they have been so instrumental to just mentor me and just guide me through this difficult process. We started to go hang out with homeless people to really help them, to really reach out into the community. For about 3 years now, Laura Enzi and myself have been going to the Marathon County Jail to do Bible study with the inmates. Through the Joseph Project, Maggie and myself and others in the church, we've been able to help people in this community for the last 4 years to be able to get jobs in Wausau. A lot of these people are addicts. They have individual issues with addiction. So today, this is who we are today. This is kind of the story of that. Is that I am just so blessed to have all of you, because we can all come here and we can set aside all of our differences and we can say together, we want to be an example in this community to say this is what Jesus Christ can do through all of us. When the color of our skin, our backgrounds, our addiction, our unemployment, our homelessness status, none of that stuff matters. We are all not perfect. And this is the right place for all of us to be at. And so I'm just so thankful to have all of you guys here with us today. So that's the story of the cross. Now you guys know how we got there, okay? All right, let's give a big round of applause for that. All right, so now we're going to be talking about the new building. Our second purpose for today is to celebrate the grand opening of our church. Never in my wildest dream could I have ever imagined that 5 years ago that we would have this beautiful building today. And here's that journey. 5 years ago, I would have never thought. There was a time period there where I just thought that the church was just going to completely die. And nothing good was going to come out of that. So never in my wildest dream could I have imagined that we would be here today, especially in this building. I feel like as a church planter, that I feel like I'm Moses. When you plant a church, there is no church. You have to plant the church. And so then Moses knew that he needed to take his people to the promised land. God gave me a responsibility to take my flock here to whatever he wants us to go. I had no idea. God didn't say it's going to be 740 Grand Avenue. I just had to walk in obedience, okay? And so then I feel like I'm Moses, like, God, where do we go next? I have no idea. So then in 2016, we started in my house in Weston. In 2017, we went to the north side of Wausau. In 2018, we rented the YWCA in downtown Wausau. But by the end of 2019, we did not know this. But the landlord came to us and said, hey, by the way, that big space that you're using, it's going to be turned into a restaurant. And they're going to be coming in about a month. And so then we're like, where do we go? And it's just been so awesome and amazing that in this entire journey, the most peace and calm that I've ever had in being the pastor of the church is just not worrying where we're going to be physically located. I just feel like, God, you need to just go before me, and you're going to choose that place. I just have full faith and trust that at the right time, you're going to give us the right location. And so God has just been so amazing and faithful to always provide that place for us. So we didn't have a place by the beginning of 2009, by the kind of the end of 2019. So then, January of 2020, I was calling all these realtors and stuff like that, looking for a commercial property. And so then this building came open. So almost financially impossible for the Cross to afford. You have to remember, we started this with just a few families. And our regular tithings back then when the church started was maybe just $100, okay? Well, $100 for something like this, that was going to be really difficult. We knew we needed a building. We knew we couldn't rent anymore because renting was just not working anymore. And so then we looked at the price tag of this building, and it was almost impossible. But thankfully, God brought an angel into our church. And this angel says, I will help. And with that promise to me, we were able to then finally be able to afford this building because somebody stepped up and said, I can make that happen. So we came here. We looked at this building. It wasn't much. Ed and I came and we did the tour with the realtors. And so that's what the back of the building looks like. That was the bathroom. This was outside the bathroom. And this is kind of the hallway and the kitchen a little bit. And this was kind of our storage room. And look at this. Look at that. Look how ugly that was, okay? So that was over here, okay? So we went and we looked at it. We really liked it. We're like, okay, let's give this a shot. And then COVID hit. And when COVID hit, okay, the bank that we wanted to kind of get our financing through, it was really weird. The bank was really afraid that our funds were going to drop. And the bank says, through COVID, and I want you guys to know that during this time period, we really couldn't meet because the state wasn't allowing us to meet. But we wanted to get this building, but the bank came back and said, we know your financial report. And so through COVID, if your funds dip, we're not going to support you. We're not going to give you the financing. It's like, but it's COVID, like, it's going to be so hard for people to just gather and meet. They're like, well, then we're not going to finance that because we need to see that your financial records are going to be stable or it's going to be better. And it's like, you've got to be kidding me. COVID's already challenging enough to gather people, and now you're saying that you're not going to finance because our numbers might drop. You've got to be understanding that it's going to be difficult for church people to come together. And that was kind of their ultimatum. But it was so amazing that through COVID, our finances stayed the same or they were actually better. So we would not have this building today if everybody did step up during COVID. So that was our financial woes, and we were able to prove to the bank that our finances were okay. They were willing to commit to us. So by late spring of 2020, we finally went back to the YWCA. We gathered all of our stuff, put it in the vans and the trucks and the trailers. We came over here, we unloaded, we started to figure out what we wanted to do with this building. And so, yeah, that's how the building looked a long time ago, last year. And so, after we moved in here, obviously we needed chairs. And so then the little kiddos from the church, we gathered together. We started to help out. And so then we just wanted to make this place look like a beautiful place that was a respectable place of worship. And so then we needed the painters. And if you guys don't know of a more dangerous person, it's Mela with a paintbrush. Okay? Because on that day, I became the Blue Man Crew. All right? Okay? All right. So that blue was right here too. All right? So then, yeah, it was just really awesome just having the help of so many people. And so then, here's Enoch. Let's see here.
I'm tired.
You're tired? Okay. See, like, that's what we need to do. Everybody, it doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, everybody can have a part in the church. So, I want to especially thank the Yang boys. When you're the pastor's kid, unfortunately, you get a big brunt of a lot of the work. And so I just want to thank my boys for that. Thank you for your patience and just the work that we have to do for the church. And so we just came here, we just did a lot of work just to make it look really beautiful, cut down some trees. And then, just want to especially thank Bob for coming here to just help us out with our carpet. If it wasn't for Bob, we would still have nasty poo carpet, okay? And so thanks for that. And then, it's really amazing too. That's when we actually met Aaron. So then Aaron came just to help us out. And ever since that first day that Aaron's been here, he's never left.
Amen.
And so it's been really awesome to see that. He just came to help out, and he's like, this place is pretty cool. I want to be a part of the cross. And now Aaron's a permanent part of our church because a long time ago. He came in just to help out to do the carpet. So then Ed and I, actually not Ed and I, Ed, okay? Ed started to put the frames in. I just look good in the picture, that's all. Okay? All right? And then, so we have all these different helpers to come and start putting up the drywall. And yeah, so again, lots of Ed. And lots of Laura. And so then our building started to come together. And that's the reason why today we're able to worship the way that we do. And so, at this time, I just want to do a special shout out. Ed and Laura Hensley, we are forever grateful for all you have done. So at this time, I'm going to ask that the both of you please come up to the front, please.
We love you.
Yes.
Love you back.
Okay.
Come on up. You can come on up, all the way up here. So, I want you guys to know that you guys are more than just an elder and an elder's wife. To me and my family, you're our family and you're our friend. You have been an answer to my prayers. When I started this church 5 years ago, I just knew I needed a really, really strong couple to just back me up in everything. I had no idea who that was going to be, but I just prayed, God, send me a couple that is going to help me. And so then you guys have been that couple to just help us through everything. Our church would not be here today if it were not for you two. So you guys might not know this, but about 95% of the work that you guys see here, it's because of these two. Okay? So after work, after Ed works 8 hours, he comes here and puts in more hours so that this church can look like the way that it does. On days that Laura is off, she comes here and she puts more work into this building. Okay? So we are just forever indebted to the both of you for all the work that you guys have done into this. Every single person that walks through this door, they're like, this is a really beautiful place. And I say, it's all because of these two. Because, yeah. If it wasn't for the both of you, we love you so much. And so then, we just want to give you, the both of you, just this thank you card to show you our token of our appreciation. All right. I don't know if there's anything you want to say. You don't have to, but if you want to, that's fine.
Come on, Ed.
Give him the mic.
Just one more time.
I'll just start, I guess. I didn't really know that you were going to do this, but yeah, it's not work, really. Doing this is, I don't know, it's got purpose, so it's not work, it's really enjoyable, and it's enjoyable for what can be, you know, what it can do, just that we have a home, we being all of us, you know. So I guess that's the purpose, our family and our friends. So when I was thinking when Pastor was talking about starting a multi-ethnic church, I don't see color, I don't see race, I don't see social status, I don't do all that. So you all are my friends and family.
All right, all right.
I would like to say that God brought us here because of brokenness in our family. We went through a lot of hard times not too long ago. And so we were broken, like a lot of us are in this room. And that's what brought us to this church with this wonderful pastor and teacher. And the love he has for us was felt right away. And I know he loves everybody and gives his all for all of us. And so brokenness brought us here, and it's a blessing that we're on the same page, that we were broken at the same time, that God could bring us here together and work together and know that this is all for God's glory, and to have other people just know Jesus better and grow in a relationship with him. So it does have a big purpose.
All right.
A lot of you don't know this, but every Sunday we make a mess out of our church, and we all leave. And when we leave, somebody needs to clean it up the next time. And so at this time, I want to invite Laura Slaker to please come up to the front. Come on up, Laura. So there are people that make things happen in front of the scene, and then there's also people that make things that happen behind the scenes. And Laura is one of those humble servant leaders that just works behind the scenes to just make sure that every Sunday when we do come to church, that this church looks like a respectable place of worship. Laura cleans our entire church. She doesn't get paid at all. It's all volunteers. She does this every week so that we can all come here on Sunday. And so as a token of our appreciation for you to keep this place tidy and clean, we just want to give you this card as a token of our appreciation. Did you want to say anything, Laura?
Okay, I was really happy when
you brought Ed and Laura up here, because they've done so much, but I wasn't expecting to be here too. But, I do it just because I like to help out. Anything I can do to help someone else's life easier is what I enjoy. And I met Pastor Yao at the Bridge Street Mission where I used to do some work there. And when I found out he was helping with homeless and the less fortunate people that were really struggling, that's what drew me into the church. But I'm glad to be here and glad to see it growing like it is. And I love you all.
So I don't have enough time to mention everyone. I can thank all of you. I just don't have enough time. But there are so many of you that have contributed your time, your funds to make this building what it is today. And from the bottom of my heart, and from the bottom of all of our hearts, from the Board of Elders, we just want to thank all of you for the love, the generosity, and the kindness that you guys have shown all of us. Thank you to the Cross family. We would not be here today if it wasn't for every single one of you and your support. We love you. So at this time, I want to hand over the stage to some VIPs. These are our honored guests that have come to just give us words of encouragement for today. And so then, just for the sake of time, no more than 5 minutes. But at this time, I want to hand over the microphone to my good friend, Pastor Chris Cooper. So come on up, Pastor Chris Cooper. A lot of you don't know this, but we don't have a whole lot of funding at the Cross. And when I met Pastor Chris Cooper several years back, he said, our church, we want to financially support the Cross. This is the only church in all of central Wisconsin that has continually, after many years, have financially helped the Cross. We are where we're at today because of the leadership and the support that we have received from Pastor Chris Cooper and Community Church.
All right.
Good morning.
Morning.
So the person that is standing here talking to you today is the only pastor who gets nervous when he has to hold a microphone. That would be me. I just want to say, for those of you that have just been acknowledged, what it means to a pastor to have people like you support the church faithfully, not just in the money, but in the time that you give. It means a lot. So it's been wonderful to be here. I just want to encourage you with a couple verses. If you read through Exodus, which I did recently, reading through Exodus, Moses has brought people out of Egypt. You said you feel like Moses, so this might speak to you. But Moses is now at the point where God has told him what the tabernacle is supposed to look like. He's given him all the pieces of the tabernacle that's supposed to be made. And this is at the end, after everything's been made. Then we read these words in Exodus chapter 39, verse 42. According to all that the Lord had commanded Moses, so the people of Israel had done all the work. And Moses saw all the work, and behold, they had done it. As the Lord had commanded, so had they done it. Then Moses blessed them. Can you imagine what a wonderful moment that would be? God had come and he had told them all the things they were supposed to make for the tabernacle. A long list of things. In fact, all of Exodus chapter 39 is one long list of things that they had to make. Out of gold, out of silver, out of fabric, all kinds of stuff that had never been created before. And now they come to the end of Exodus, and Moses is going to inspect it. And so they start bringing all the stuff they've made past Moses. Now, I was in building for 20-some years. And I know how scary an inspection can be, especially when you have homeowners that want to move into that house. Sometimes you make it on the first try, and sometimes you don't. And if you read all of the things that went into this tabernacle, the fact that they could pass an inspection on the first time, that's amazing. Moses looks at all this stuff, and he sees that it's good, and he blesses it. And not only did they build it to their own expectation, they went far beyond that. They built it the way the Lord commanded that the tabernacle be built. That's an amazing thing. Now we could wonder, were the people that did this just that great? were the people that created this church, were the people that have done all these things over the last 5 years. Are they just that great that this is as successful as it is? And so you have to know the backstory of these stories, right? We got the backstory of this church today. Let me just tell you briefly what the backstory is to this story right here. They didn't build a tabernacle and pass inspection on the first try because they were that great. They were able to do that because the Spirit of God came upon them to be able to do it in every area of the tabernacle. And that's what's happened here. So I just want to encourage you guys. You're here to celebrate this 5 years of this church. You're here to celebrate this building and all the things that have gone on over the last 5 years. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into establishing a church. Very few churches make it past 5 years. You're one of the exceptions. Now it is clear, as my wife and I drove up here today, it is clear that you have some exceptional people here. You have an exceptional pastor. But it would be nothing without the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
If you go back to Exodus chapter 35 and chapter 36, that's the beginning of that story about the building of the tabernacle. And it is there that it is said, the Lord said, I will put my spirit upon certain people to be able to do this work. And he moved the people to be generous with all that they had, with their time, and they were able to do the tabernacle. And I just want to say this in closing. So much hard work has gone into the last 5 years. And so much hard work will continue to go into what happens here. And it is so important for each and every one of you to know that you don't do this in your own strength. And this church isn't here because of a particular personality or a particular gifting, as grateful as we are for every gift that comes into this church. It is successful because you guys want the Holy Spirit to be a part of it.
Amen.
And let me close with this. I'm a Baptist pastor. I just said that twice now. You mentioned earlier about your military service. The two main people that God put his Spirit on to form the tabernacle and to get everything done were two of the most unlikely people ever. One of the men who was called to do this came through the line of Perez. And if you look at the line of Perez in Scripture in Genesis, it came from a family that had some dysfunction. With Judah and Tamar and all of that. You know, God uses the most unlikely people to do the greatest works.
Amen.
The next person that he called to use in this way was a man who was from the tribe of Dan. That may not mean much to us at first sight, but the tribe of Dan, when Judah blessed the different tribes, the tribe of Dan was a war tribe. They were good at battle. And yet God called out of this tribe who was good at battle a person who was creative, who was gifted to work with gold and silver, who was artistic. You know, in many ways, what we expect will come out of our life isn't what God expects or will have us do in life. You may be here today and you may not wonder, you may not think that you're gifted to do anything for this church, but you are. Maybe you might think that you're from such a bad background that God won't use you. He will. So let me just remind you this morning, just as he called you out of the military and gave you this church to build, just as he called Martin Luther out of his family, who his dad wanted him to be a lawyer, but God called him for the Reformation, he's calling each and every one of us to do something for him. In and of yourself, this will be impossible, but with his Spirit, it is possible. So whatever you do in this church, in every way that you serve this church or whatever church you attend, do it by the power of the Holy Spirit, and God will bless it. Thank you.
Amen.
So I'm involved with a lot of community work, and with the community work that I've been able to do in the last couple of years, I have been able to connect and get to know a really good brother and leader in this community, who I just find myself to just be a godly Christian mentor for a lot of the work that he has done. And so today, we're really honored that Grace and Roger Green are able to be with us. And so at this time, I would just like for Roger to just come up here and just give a few words of encouragement for us. Roger is a great supporter of this project.
dress this morning. You better dress how you feel, so I had to dress up, but that really isn't me. I just want you to know I'm a common guy. I want to read my intro and then I'll go off to my... I want to read my intro and then I'll go off to my story a little bit. Thank you for the privilege to be here for your 5th anniversary. Your journey has not been met with challenges and obstacles, but you pursued and you never gave up. Your leader was not to be denied. That example gave me and others the courage to press on and expand the good news of the gospel.
All right, Roger.
It's interesting that in 2015, something happened to me which caused me to continue on with the Joseph Project. I was taking a break from our business in Florida, and I took a walk every morning. And this morning, one of the mornings, it was either in February or March, and I was walking down the street. There was a big bus stop, and all the people were standing at the very edge of the curb like this, the whole row. And it was strange to me to see people standing in that row. As I got closer to the bus stop, I knew why. There was a homeless man sitting all by himself with his grocery cart in front of him. They treated him like a leper, probably, because of the way he looked and the smell on our trip. But the closer I got to that bus stop, and you might think this is strange for me to say, but God spoke to me that minute. Maybe it was an angel, I don't know. But I sat down by this man, and I shared the subject, but I said, how did you get there? What happened to you? You know, and he opened up his life to me. And it was amazing what I heard from him. He told me he was a wealthy man one time. Then he got caught up in the NASDAQ in 2008, 2009, and lost everything that he had. He tried to go back to Minneapolis, Minnesota by his family, and they rejected him because he said, you made your bed, that's where you're going to be. So he ends up in Florida. I backchecked his story as I talked to him. He actually was in Wausau, Wisconsin one time. And he gave the historic points. That was kind of interesting. So after that, it was in July of 2015, I decided to point in time with Catholic Charities. So whenever I was needed, I came up and did the point in time. And I did that for most of the years now, like 4 or 5 years. Now, many times after that, there was a Catholic Charities, it was an open house, and I did that as much as I could. I'm still spending Monday nights at the Loan Shelter, which ends this Monday night for the last time. I'm only doing that background because when I got involved with what did Joseph Project start, 2016? 2016. Somehow, he gave me a call and said, we'd be willing to do a mock interviewer. And so I've been doing that in this building for a couple, 3 years. And it's been an interesting experience for me to be a part of the Joseph Project. If you don't know what it is, somehow you gotta find out what the Joseph Project is. Taken out of the Old Testament and Joseph and his brothers. That was then a big encouragement to me, and I've had some success with homeless people through that. The other day I was just looking for a verse that seemed to hit me, but I couldn't find it. I finally found it in Matthew 22. And it's a parable of the king who invited his family and the city to his feast for his wedding. He sent out his servants, and they came back and said nobody was interested, and some actually started killing some of his servants. So what does the king do next? He sends his servants out to the highways and byways. And in some translations it will say street corners, some of them say something else. But basically, he went out to the highways and byways. You know, and that's what the Homeless Project is all about. And that's what the Joseph Project is all about. These people are hurting a lot, and their futures aren't very great. But we can present Jesus Christ to them. There's a new life in Jesus Christ. And so, Pastor Yao has been very involved in the Joseph Project. And he didn't say much about that today. I don't know. But anyway, Joseph Project is something that needs to be publicized, it needs to be broadcast, it needs to be used to disadvantaged people, unemployed people to Jesus Christ. So anyway, I have so much respect for this man. And I heard some things this morning which I never heard before, and some of you but anyway, my heart
So another really great friend of mine is State Representative Pat Snyder, who has just been so instrumental in a lot of the costs that we're doing here in central Wisconsin, coming from kind of a more governmental, political side. Really awesome to have the support of Representative Pat Snyder, who's like, Pat, if you want to come up here.
Well, good morning, everyone. Great to be here. I tell you what, the energy in this room is so pleasant. It's so peaceful. It's a lot more enjoyable than what I have to face usually in Madison. You know, and Pastor Yao's story is totally amazing. Every time I think about this, the things, the hurdles that he has been through, and just keeps pushing. Not only is he going upstream, but it's a rapid, and he still finds his way to keep pushing and to reaching folks like yourself. You know, I think we've learned a lot in this COVID period. We've learned a lot that people now are getting to the point of depression, and they're filling that depression up with alcohol, drugs, maybe a lot of food. But the one thing that, you know, because of the COVID and the closing down of churches, the one thing a lot of people maybe aren't doing is turning to God. And I think this nation, this state, this country would be so much better served if we would start turning things over to God and turning back. It just seems that I don't know if we're not perfect people, and some of us are afraid maybe to release everything and turn it over to God, kind of like what Pastor Yao did in his deal in Iraq, just turned it over. Danny Thomas did that as well. Struggling actor made a deal with the Lord, saying, "If you help me in my career, I'll help do something." He started St. Jude's Hospital. So. I don't mean everyone should go out of here and now try to make a deal, But the one thing to do is to really sit and meditate and be able to say, Lord, I want to turn everything over to you. And it might be tough at first, because we are kind of creatures of, we like to control our destiny. We like to control things. But I think that will help. And maybe, what's so amazing is everyone here at the cross, you're ambassadors to others. The people that you touch, you might not realize. What I think is so impressive of Pastor Yao and the folks is, I guess, called disciples, maybe. But when you do go out to the homeless, to the jails, and things of that nature, you're inserting Christian topics, the Lord, the Holy Spirit, the people that maybe weren't filling that void with the Lord. So I just think this is tremendous. There's more and more to come. I know that. I lean on Pastor Yao a lot for some of the state stuff that we do that his insight can help us with. When my turn comes up, we always start our sessions, 4 sessions, with a prayer. So when my turn comes up, I'm going to invite you to give the leading prayer for our assembly. So that's what Thank you. Happy anniversary. You know I'm always here for you.
When we bought this building, the city of Schofield came and said, you need to put up a fence. We're like, how much? Well, it needs to be 8 feet tall, it needs to be this high, and it needs to be this long. And we're like, we just spent a lot of money on just kind of stuff for this church. We don't have any extra money. And so Pastor Robin Wild over at Christ Community Church, he said, it's okay, we're going to help you. He wasn't able to make it here today, so this is his video for us.
Good morning to Pastor Yao Yang, to the leadership of your church, and to all of your church members and visitors. We here at Christ Community Church in Schofield salute you, and we join with you today on the celebration of your new facility. After years of having to meet in rented facilities, God has now blessed you with your own building. Pastor Yao took me through a tour of the facility some months ago, and I was so proud just to see all of the things that you had done, and I'm sure a lot of advancements have been made in the last few months. But as you know, the building is not the church. The church is the people who belong to Jesus Christ who come to that building. The building is a tool of ministry. In my home state of North Carolina, there was a church, in fact, a Church of Christ, and they had a sign out front, and it said, "The Church of Christ meets here." And I thought, you know what? They've got that exactly right. The facility is not the church, it's the people who meet inside that building. So the Church of Christ meets here. There are three things I'd like to just leave with you this morning, and I know you do all of these quite well already. But number one, don't let that new building hinder your ministry. Keep going out into the community like you do. You're one of the best at doing that in our local area, and because a lot of people that you minister to may never show up at your new building. So I hope that you'll continue to do the community work that you already do. The second thing is to always use that new building as a place of prayer and a place of worship. No, God doesn't inhabit a building, but He does inhabit the people who come to that building. There's nothing quite as special as God's people meeting together to worship on a Sunday morning or any other time that we come together. And the third and last thing I would say is that I pray that your building will be a hospital for people who are hurting, people who are recovering. I know that you already do that very well, and now that you've got your own facility, you'll have a place where you can do that on a more regular basis. You know, some pastors may see another church as competition, but I don't see it that way at all. In fact, I see the Cross Church as a co-laborer in the kingdom with Christ Community Church. You're going to reach people we will never reach, and I thank God for your congregation. I thank God for the successes that you already have and for the many souls that I know you're going to win into the kingdom. May the Lord supply you with all of your needs that you may have. May He grant you guidance and perseverance for the days and years to come. All the best from Christ Community Church. Godspeed to all of you, our brothers and sisters at the Cross Church. God bless and congratulations on your new facility.
Later, we're going to have Congressman Tom Tiffany. He will also be here to just congratulate our church as well. So later on, he'll be here. We do have some of our honored guests. I thought that Ron and Jan Boyd was going to be here, but they're not here today. It happens to be Margaret Ann's brother. And so then, he's never been here at the church, but he is a great supporter of our church. And so it's just really good to have Margaret Ann's family supporting us. I also want to thank our honored guests, my mother-in-law, Kia Vu, okay? And so then, so my mother-in-law is the one that makes it happen, because when Mela and I are running around doing all these prayers and meetings and stuff like that, for the last 5 years, we pawn off all of our kids for my mother-in-law, okay? So she's the one that's able to just do that. Na siya ka pa hapon na. Kapalo ba no hapon. Okay. 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 Yeah, so. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so she's just really thankful that God has given her the strength and the energy to, watch our 6 kids. That takes a lot of energy. She knows that although she's not able to go out there and be able to spread the gospel in that way, when she's watching our kids, that allows Mela and myself to be able to go and spread the gospel message to others. So she feels like she's also doing this work with us. Not with us, but behind the scenes. And so then, it's because of her humble spirit, her willingness to always take her kids, that sometimes when I get phone calls for places I need to go, that we're able to just give that for my mother-in-law to watch. And so just know that our church would not be here today if it wasn't for her. So our last honored guest for today is actually my brother Chang and his wife, Maisi Yang. And so at this time, I'm going to have my brother Chang come up to the front. And he's the only brother. So there's 9 of us. He's the only one that's in Wausau with me. Everyone else is outside of the state. So.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, growing up here in Wausau, seeing the struggles that not just we see as immigrants, but just as a community as a whole, all the problems going on in the community. Just knowing that there are Christians out there who are really serving the ministry and passionate about the Bible, about God. Especially my brother, he's just a great role model for me growing up. I feel very blessed because, I'm a simple man, and my brother is very academic and educated, and he's a pastor, and so I look up to him a lot. And I guess there's really not much more I can say except for, thank God, and I just have a little Bible verse here for all of us here. It's in the book of Matthew, chapter 17, verse 20. It says, he replied, because you have so little faith, truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. And I just felt this verse in my heart as I came here today, that God is moving mountains here, and we just need to have faith and trust in God, because what we have seen so far, God is going to do even greater and even more. And so God bless all of you guys. And I'm so happy that you guys are all here today. And we got to continue to just serve God and love our community.
All right, so just on cue, we have Congressman Tom Tiffany. And so, Congressman, if you can please come on up. It's a really big deal to be able to have Tom with us today. That the congressman, he's so busy doing all of his work in Washington, D.C., but for him to be able to come here today and spend some time to encourage the cross. And so, just really also want to thank Maggie too. Maggie's the one that's able to work wonders so that we can get Congressman to come here today.
Well, good morning.
Morning.
It is so great to be here this morning to join all of you at the Cross Church. And Maggie has told me the story here of how the church started in Yao's living room, is that correct? And now has come to this. What a great example of faith and persistence and believing in that mission that you have. I just want to thank him so much for his service to our country. Thank you so much for that. And now your service to the community here. This means so much to everybody that's here that is seeking that higher power that guides our lives. And sometimes we lose track of that. And it's so important that we're able to come back and have this place that we can all go to that gives us that sense of community, that gives us that faith in the Lord who serves, who we all serve, correct?
Amen.
Yeah, absolutely. A big thank you to Maggie Cronin. So many of you know Maggie, and she does such a terrific job of helping us in our office. And thanks, Maggie, for being It's really good to see my friend Pat Snyder, who's here also, and I know shares in congratulations to the Cross Church and all that. So anyhow, a little closer. I have a proclamation here today that I want to present to Yao. And I present it to Yao but I'm sure he would say that it goes to all of us, right? He is the representative here as the pastor. This is for all of you. And I just want to recognize the great work that's been done here by all of you at the Cross Church, but in particular the leadership of Yao Yang here to develop this church for people to be able to share their faith. But also the great things that come out of the mission of faith and church. Helping people that are in need, being able to give them that assistance when they're ready to have that and be able to get their lives to a better place. But in particular, your work in sponsoring the Joseph Project here in the Wausau area, which started down in southeastern Wisconsin by Senator Ron Johnson. He just did it out of, he wanted to connect people who really were in need of being able to have that thing that they can believe in their lives. And oftentimes, that surrounds us with our work. Work is so important for us to have worth, to have that self-worth that we are contributing to society. And that's what the Joseph Project was all about, is connecting people where there was that real need for them that wanted to turn their lives around, that wanted to have work that was valued while also having faith in their Lord. And so it started down there in southeastern Wisconsin and was brought here. Maggie and others have been instrumental in helping make that happen. But I want to thank Pastor Yao Yang so much and everyone that works with him in advancing the Joseph Project. And I think we've had about 100 people, is that right, in the Wausau area, that have become gainfully employed. Now, not everybody is going to, it isn't, as with all of our lives, it isn't straight to the top, right? We all take a circuitous route in the places that we go in our lives, and that'll be the same thing with those folks. But they have at least gotten a chance, and they have seen what success can look like. And especially for all of you young people that are here today, always keep the faith. Always keep the faith. There are difficult times that we all go through in our lives, but we can get through them, and our faith helps us to accomplish that. So with that, I want to present this proclamation from my office in the House of Representatives to Pastor Yao Yang. So maybe we should probably shoot a picture of it. Come on. So what I have here is a certificate of recognition from the United States House of Representatives to the Cross Church and Pastor Yao Yang for serving the Wausau community for 5 years in your involvement in the Joseph Project. Tom Tiffany, thank you.
All right, so at this time, for the sake of time, we're going to do some personal testimonies from the church, but because we don't have a whole lot of time left, if there's anyone from the church that wants to come up here and speak about just how the cross has transformed your life, we're going to limit this to just 1 minute per person, just for the sake of time. So if you want to come on up and speak, maybe if you guys can line up, and then we can kind of go through this as quick as possible. So come on up if you want to come up here and speak, if you can line up, and then we'll go through this as fast as we can, 1 minute each.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming very much. And God has blessed the church in many ways, and we just want to thank for all the honored guests. America, as well as Pastor Yao's life, as well as this church, are about freedom. Okay? America is basically a history of fighting for freedom. And Pastor Yao has helped to defend our country, to deliver us the true freedom of God into our culture. And at a time when we have forces that are trying to take God out of our country, Pastor Yao has done something that takes a lot of guts. And I would just like to give him a round of applause for that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's been a blessing for us to be here, and I know that he has helped many, and all of you have also, who struggle with drug addiction, which is another way that he has delivered, with God's help, people from basically slavery. And we just can do great things with God, and I thank you so much for your leadership, and I look forward to the future of the cross. Thank you.
Well, my name is Mary New. I went Pastor Story and I go back to second grade. And then I was in that one picture, I was kind of hiding behind some kids. But long story short, in 2016, my ex-husband and I were going through some issues, and that's when Pastor started his church. And he reached out to me, said he's like, I'm not sure if you're a Christian, but I have started a church in my home, and I see that you're kind of having some tough times. So I attended his church in his house twice, and then my ex-husband and I moved to Tennessee for 10 months and moved back here. And 2018, this last Wednesday, it was 2018, I got myself arrested for throwing my ex-husband's phone, and I reported the abuse because my ex-husband was very abusive at the end of our marriage, and ended up homeless, living on my cousin's couch in her bedroom. And I was laying there one night, and I'm like, I need something positive in my life. And I had messaged Pastor asking him if he knew about any homes for rent or where I could get help. And he's like, well, I don't know of anything, but you could always come to church. And that's when he was at the YWCA. And for the last 3 years in May, my family and I have been coming to church faithfully. And Pastor's not only a friend, he's family. Him and his wife and his kids, love them all. And that's pretty much it.
He was actually my 6th grade teacher, and I've gone through a lot. Through addiction, with my family being broken up, and my brother. But I think it's great that this place where we can come to bring us all together, and it just feels really special to me, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity and everything that you've done for me. Wow, I feel so much empathy right now. So much energy. But I just want to say thank you. Thank everyone here too.
My name is Margaret Ann Powell, and a little over 2 years ago, I rented one of my duplexes to a woman that just came out of prison. She had 3 children, did not have any custody of them, and didn't know which way to go. And so I allowed her to live in my property, and through that, a few months later, she gave her testimony at the Jefferson Inn downtown. Because I was one of her sponsors, I was there to support her. So being there, the exciting part of all of it is that during my years of being a foster parent, my son, Chase McGee, was there. And Chase saw me, and he ran up to me, he lifted me up in the air, he twirled me around, he was hugging me and kissing me, and he's right there today. He was only 6 years old when he came to live with me. And I love him. He's not born of my body, but he's born of my heart. And there are others here that the next morning, I received a phone call from Pastor Yao Yang. And he said, I know you don't know me, but he said, I saw your love and I saw your passion. And he said, I'd like you to come to the Cross Church. And I'd never heard of it before. And I explained to him, my husband has dementia. My husband was his teacher in 6th grade math. And there are other young people here that were in my husband's class at John Muir or at Town Union School. Now, since that time, my husband has passed away 16 months yesterday. And so At the end of that journey of dementia, I thought about my foster children. I've been coming to the cross. Everybody here was wonderful to Richard. They'd go out, they'd bring him in, have a special chair. Everybody loved on him, made him feel so welcome and a part of the church. And so after the death of my husband, I thought about, what is my purpose? What do I have to live for? And I thought I was the oldest person at the cross. I recently found out I'm not the oldest woman, but I'm just about so old. And so I have become a mother. I've become a grandmother to different people here. And I see that Nick isn't here now, but he was one of my first. And on my birthday last year, Nick wrote me, made a card for me, and it said, I have never had a grandmother, but now I have one because I have you. So if you want to be at a church where you can serve, I don't do very much. I'm an old woman, and I have a lot of health issues, so there's very little I can do. But I can make a phone call, I can send a text, I can love on others, I can listen to them, and God has given me a purpose, and that's why I'm here. And I love all of you. I love Pastor Yao, his family, Nela, all the children, and I love all of you. So God bless everyone that's here.
Hello, my name is Milton Esco. This is my pastor today. I'm a Vietnam vet. I'm a recovered heroin addict. I did 17 years in the federal penitentiary. God came into my life while I was doing time. I made a promise, and I asked him, just like my mentor here about making a deal. You get me out of this prison because I was set up for life in prison without parole. If you get me out of here, I'm going to serve you any way you want me to. That's all I knew about the Bible, except the 23rd Psalm I learned when I was a short. My parents taught me that from Barbados, that's where I came from. Since 2000, I arrived here in Warsaw. I said, Lord, it seems like I'm getting antsy now because you haven't directed me to the church I need to be at, to give the gift that you have allowed me to receive. And I just kept praying. I've been to a lot of different churches around here. But at the same time, I had to remember, it's not my will, it's his will to be done. So finally I ran into Pastor Yao with Rich Street. We introduced ourselves. I didn't see him again until he kept moving. And I said, that's the same thing that happened to me. I've been to different churches, they closed up. I said, Lord, I know you didn't bring me this far to stop now. So okay, what am I supposed to do? Get back into the Word. Just hold on to the Word. Keep your faith. I do things in the community to help out, but that's another level of things that you have to do. So I finally ran into y'all once again, and I heard that he said, man, I'm about to get my own church. So praise the Lord. I've been praying again, Lord, is this where I'm supposed to be? All of a sudden I get a phone call some months later. Let's break bread together, brother. I said, who is this? Pastor Yao. Oh, I answered to my prayer, when and where? He brought that about. I've been here ever since. And I know there's more things we're going to do here. I was blessed while I was in the federal system. Got 2 years of college. I never would have got that if I'd have stayed on the street. I was too far into the heroin scene and cocaine. But God blessed me to change my life while I was in there. And I tell people today, Martin King, I know about Malcolm back in the day and all those kind of things. But see, God got me here for another purpose. All the things I've been through between Nam and back here in the United States, that racial thing, I just give love. You don't have to love me back. My job is to love you. And I'm about that. And I'm going to stand what Christ is doing today. People say, well, he did that back in Moses' time. Now, he's still doing that April 2021 today, if you have faith in it. And I just thank you for being here today. I thank God for my life. And believe me, we are going places. We're going places.
Like the weirdest compliment ever. Like, dude's got some dual grammar, dude.
So I just want to share that we kind of started out with the cross we were the couples that didn't come normally, but it was one of our family friends that coming. I just want to thank the cross and also Pastor Yao. Because of him, I am a believer of Christ. When we first went to the cross, I was not a believer of Christ. I had no idea what God's intentions are, or what I'm supposed to do for God. I'm married. Satan who was a Christian all his life, and every time he talks about God, I'm just like, I don't know what to talk about, whatever. But now I'm here, and I am a true believer in Jesus and God, and He has done a lot of miracles in my life, and I'm glad to be part of this cross. So I just want to thank everyone that came out today to celebrate our 5 years anniversary.
I'm going to try to make this short because I know we're all hungry, so.
That's my daddy.
I just want to do
You're not my daddy. You're not mine. Somebody lose their kid. It's not mine.
Well, I especially want to thank Ed and Yao for being on the board with them. You know, like, if you imagine a 3-man group on the board. I'm the third man that, like, just getting dragged all the time. And as much as I don't want to do it, I'm going with them no matter what. And I just want to thank them so much for that, because it's like, I watch movies and like, you know what? Why is that guy even responding, you know? But he's the guy that fills in the tracks where it's like, okay, we need you to throw one flag here so we know where the aim is at. And they're the ones that do all the work. You just have to do that one part and you can run away and do whatever you want. And they're like, and it's like, to me, it's like, oh, that's kind of important. I feel so good about that. But to Pastor and Ed, they're the ones that like let me know, hey, you know, that's the key point. That's where the nail is at. And I just want to thank them, you know, for always encouraging me, to just stay, to be patient, to continue to have faith in God, just to let His will, get to me, and just trust Him to do what I need to do. And again, I just want to thank everyone from the cross, everyone that's here today, that's helped us celebrate today. It's a very monumental day for us. I can see in Cassius' eyes, from the day when he was in the living room until now, it's different. He's lifted, he's enlightened, and I know he wants all of us to feel what he feels. Thank you.
Why the music so
Cool. Is it on?
Yep, it's on. Just gotta hold it a little bit closer.
No, you turned it off.
It's not on.
Put it on, Ron.
A green light will go on.
Green light is on.
It is on or off?
Okay, I guess it's on.
There you go.
All right. It's just a testimonial to the pastor. About a year and a half ago, I broke my shoulder and I couldn't get it operated on. And I got talking to him one day and I said, I've got a cord of wood to split and I don't think it's safe using a chainsaw with only one arm. So, next thing I knew, he and Ed were at the house and with all the boys, and they came and they cut and split my firewood and stacked it up. I couldn't have done it. That's the only thing I can say. I couldn't have done it. So, everybody needs help. Everybody needs to reach out because no man is an island. And I need to thank him and his kids and everywhere. Yeah. Okay, I just wanted to say that. Thank you, Pastor. I really appreciate it.
What is she doing?
All right, so at this time, I'm just gonna do some, Ed, why don't you come on up here and just do your quick announcements.
Sorry, I don't think that was me, but whatever. Real quick, we'll have our next Bible study this upcoming Wednesday, April 28th, starting at 5:30 p.m. Come join us. It's really a good time. I encourage everybody to come. Next week, Saturday, May 1st, will be the next women's ministry. It says starting at 11 a.m., but I think that's 9 o'clock, ladies. It's important that the women of our church gather together to support each other. We'd like to have as many women from our church come and attend as possible. Please see Laura, Casey, or Mila if you have questions. And of course, there's the baked goods in back, the breads and pastries. Please leave with some, a box or two would be good. We have plenty again this week, so you're welcome to all of that.
It's a magic.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to have Pat and Paul please come on up here. Okay. All right, so our meal today, a great part of this, we've had Pat and Paul Rondo. We also have some of our volunteers come and just prepare this wonderful meal for us to be able to eat. So we just want to give them a big round of applause. So in a little bit, they're going to explain to you, we have some gifts that we want to be able to just give you as a celebration gift souvenir for today. Next week, when you guys come back, you'll also get some lanyards. They just weren't able to be shipped in today, so next week we'll give out the lanyards. But at this time, I want to give things over to Pat and Paul Rondo. They can kind of explain the procedure for getting the gifts, and also in a little bit how we're going to do the food. So.
Thank you. And thank you to all the volunteers that helped. We have Beth, Laverne helped us, and Maggie. We all worked together.
No, I use this as that means this is got you guys.
And okay, we're going to start way in the back after Pastor says the prayer. And there's 2 lines over there, so make sure you go through every line. After you eat, there's beverages against the wall, and we have a cake. Everybody gets a cake, and we have plenty of it, and cupcakes. So, and then before you leave, over on the side, there's a bag, a cross bag, that you can each family grab one. And there's some little animals there for the children. So, and thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so here in closing, I'm going to have Pastor Chris Cooper come up to the front here. He is going to close us off with a meal and celebration. And then after that, I have instructions for all of us.
Gracious Lord, I thank you so much for this time of celebration and reflection of your faithfulness over the last 5 years. Father God, I thank you that it continues now as we gather together to fellowship and to partake in this food. Thank you for the hands that have made it, prepared it, all the preparations that have gone into this entire day. May you bless it. Thank you for your provision in all things. In Jesus' name. Amen.